Howdy y'all, TheJTJ here with Blender Video Editor tutorial number 10, Export. So as we get ready to export a video or a movie that you have completed, or you just want to do a portion of it, what you're going to do is you're actually going to render that out. I'm going to cover some of the settings that I use to render a video. Now your settings might be different for your needs or because of the workstation that you're on, but you can use mine as a baseline to sort of go from and sort of manipulate the stuff on your own to figure out what works best for you. The first thing you're going to set is up here in the top. Make sure it's on Blender Render. There are some other options, but Blender Render works pretty good. And then, like if you've set up the template like we did in an earlier tutorial, you should have your properties, but if you don't, you'd want to open your properties panel somewhere. And your properties panel will look sort of like this. Now the first little drop down is the render. Now these three buttons, if you click them, it will actively or begin to render your video. The first button is to render a scene or a still image. So if you click that, maybe you just want a still out of the video that you shot because you're going to put it on as your thumbnail for YouTube or something like that. You could just use that. The middle one is for the animation. That's what's actually the button you're going to press to actually render the entire video. And the last one is audio. Maybe you just have been working with audio and that's all you need is the audio. The next drop down is dimensions. And the dimensions is how large or what size your video is going to be. I always export mine in 920 by 1080. It's pretty good size if you're working with modern screens, modern computers. It works good. If you want to, you can make that size smaller. Of course, it'll make the file size should make it smaller because there's less pixels. The frame range is set here. Now if you want to begin it somewhere other than one, of course you just left click hold and drag that around. So if you just wanted to edit or render like a portion of your video out just to see how that portion looked, this is where you would set that out. And of course the end frame. I leave the steps at 1. I leave the aspect ratio 1:1. Frame rate, I usually is a custom because when I'm importing my screen captures, they'll come in at 24.39 or 24.40 or something like that. If your standard American video, anywhere between 23 and 25 is pretty much where you want to be. It's perfectly fine. So usually set for 24 is what we would want to work with. Next, I keep anti-aliasing on at 8. For my videos, I don't do any shading or motion blurring. Performance, I leave on auto detect. I found that the system does detect pretty well and sort of does give you a pretty good idea of what it should be doing. It's letting, hey, it's got 12 threads, and everything else I just keep pretty standard. No post processing. You have metadata here if you want to put that in. And then we get to the output. This is very important to set before you start doing anything because it will just dump your animation in a default file. So you would click this file here. It takes you to your file explorer. And then I'll set where I want it to go. You can name it. Go ahead and hit accept. And that's where it's going to output to. So now it's filled in that path. Also under output, very important setting is right here on this drop down. So go ahead and click that. These are all the different output file formats that it gives you options to with Blender. And this is one of the reasons that Blender is super powerful in the video editor is because it gives you all these options. Now there's two distinct categories here. There's the image category and the movie category. I usually, because I'm pretty confident in my machine, I always export as an MPEG. If you were doing something really large and you knew that it was going to take a while, some people prefer the image method, which what an image will do is you set up your folder, and it will literally for every single frame, it will make a PNG image. And then of course you can go into Photoshop, or you can go into GIMP, and you can compile them into another movie. Some people like to do that because if halfway through your rendering your computer crashes or the render crashes, you've got half of it done, and then you just sort of have to look and say, okay, I've got half of it, I'll start at frame 350. However, like I said, most of my video clips, they're no more than at the max 15 minutes, so I don't really have problems with crashes, so I keep it set to MPEG. And once again, you can set up with using AVI or some other file format that you like. The next important drop down is your encoding and how you want it to be encoded. So you have different options here, including flash and your different MPEGs. I keep it set on AVI, and then the codec. And this once again was just me playing around with everything, and I found that H264 was the best one for me, and I like the way it outputted that. Your audio codec is also on the encoding, and you have your different options here, and I keep it set to MP3. The bake and the freestyle I really don't mess with, and that's my setup. Once you have that set up this way, that's part of the deal with saving your template, is having all this set up, save your template, so you don't have to go through every time and manipulate that. But once you're ready, all you do is come to your animation and go ahead and click, and it'll start rendering it out. You can tell because the frames will be churning here, and it'll be showing you what's going on in your video. And that does it for Blender video editing tutorial number 10, export. Thanks for watching.